Bradberry.com. Jeff McClain joins us. Jeffrey, good morning, man. How you doing?
Hey, guys. Good morning.
So today is roster cut-down day. I'm sure you'll be talking to people all day long, so I appreciate you taking 10 minutes to hanging out with us today. We went through it yesterday. We kind of just looked at it. I don't think there's many surprise cuts coming our way. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so either. I mean, I don't think – I don't know what you qualify as a surprise cut, and generally that just doesn't happen. And really with the expanded practice squad of 16 and the fact that they can taxi those guys up on, every weekend for a while before they have to move them to the active roster, it just isn't as devastating, I guess, when a guy gets cut. As we've seen before, like the last two previous years, Britton Covey was cut, but brought back on the practice squad, and then they taxi him up each weekend because he's the punt returner, and then eventually he'd be on the 53. So, that could potentially happen again. That would be a little bit surprised, I think, at this point, because the Eagles aren't especially deep at the receiver spot, even with the addition of Jahan Dotson. But yeah, I don't really have anything, I think, on my list that would qualify as a complete shock.
So if we have a pretty good idea, Jeff, of where the roster is going to round out, where do you think is the weakest point on this Eagles roster? A place maybe how he will look around the league at other guys getting cut to potentially bring in here as a depth role or something other?
Yeah, I think tight end is certainly an area that will be addressed. Dallas Goedert is, and I'm not saying it's a weakness per se, but they had 4 on the roster all of last year. I haven't projected to only keep 2, Dallas Goedert and Grant Calcaterra. Goddard, of course, is a good starter. Calcaterra, I think, has had a better camp than he did the previous year, heading into his third year. I think he can handle the blocking part of the job. That wasn't something he did much in college, but he's really improved upon that, and he's shown that he can catch the ball in the practices that we've seen. So he'll be the number 2. The question is number 3. E.J. Jenkins had a pretty good camp. A guy that was around the NFL last year. Not a complete surprise. I just don't think, I think the Eagles probably won't have a tough time getting him through waivers. So I think that they'll feel comfortable cutting him and then bringing him back. Maybe they feel like he's done enough. And then, Alberto, the guy who they kept on the roster as the 4th tight end all of last year, and he was active a few times. He just did, he didn't do much in camp, I thought. And, at this point, and then he got hurt too as well. He had an abdomen injury. So I just don't think that he'll make the team. Maybe come back on the practice squad. So I could see them looking around for a third tight end that they want to keep on the 53-man roster.
Is it fair or unfair to look a little too deep into this Annias Smith injury that came out of nowhere yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, skepticism is kind of part of my job. So, every time, you hear about a guy that would certainly qualify as someone that the Eagles would want to put on injury reserve, like have a red shirt him a year, and then it comes out just before cut-down day, you kind of raise an eyebrow. Smith came on a little bit towards the end of camp, and he started out real slow. He's a guy that this offseason had, leg surgery, had a shin issue. So, Aaron Moorhead, when we talked to the Eagles receiver coach, when we spoke to him about Smith early in camp, he mentioned that. So that kind of told me, okay, the Eagles maybe expected him not to be ready this year. And now that he has some sort of injury, they can justifiably put him on, IR to start. Not, again, they don't have season-ending IR anymore. So, like, typically in the past, you'd have to come up with something that would justify sitting him for the entire year. Now it's just, what they say, ankle and hamstring. So they can start him out on IR and then kind of kick that can down the road because he's still not ready. And quite frankly, I don't know if he'll ever be because there's, he's a small guy, and small guys in this league have to be explosive, and he just didn't show that in camp to me, at least based upon what I saw. So yeah, I could definitely see them using that roster spot to keep someone else that maybe they would have had to release had they kept the 5th round pick in Annias Smith.
Jeff, the upside of a slow cut-down day with a roster that's pretty well set means we can ask you about the move that was made Friday with the acquisition of Jahan Dotson. We haven't gotten your thoughts since the last time we talked to you. What type of move is this for the Eagles? Is this a flyer on a guy that a team in division gave up on, or is this a bona fide, hey, we've got a really good third wide receiver now?
I think more than anything, they needed a guy that certainly could fill the role of playing inside or out, and that's Dotson, because they don't have as much like a slot role in this Kellen Moore offense. And you'll see Devontae Smith in the slot, I think, more than you did last year this season. So it wasn't like you needed just a slot guy, right? But Dotson has filled that role, but he can play a little outside too as well. So he'll be asked to do that as well. So there's that. And the other thing was they just didn't have a guy that you can look to and say, all right, if Devontae Smith or AJ Brown gets hurt, now if they get hurt for the season, then all bets are off. They're going to have to make kind of a major move to get somebody, or who knows. But if one of those guys gets hurt for a week or two, and you want to look. You look to your roster, Dotson makes sense as being able to step in there. I just don't think they had the answers. I think Johnny Wilson is someone they like, and they think that maybe eventually can be that. I think Britton Covey has shown that he can fill that slot role, but on the outside, is he much of a threat just based upon his size? Not really. So I think that probably had a little more to do with it than anything, is that they just needed someone in case. Because again, the third receiver in this offense is not going to receive a ton of targets. He's going to run a lot of clear out routes. That's what we saw from Quez Watkins last year. In fact, I think it was Britton Covey who told me that, I don't think Quez even had, one play designed for him all of last year. So Dotson's going to have to accept his role as the third guy. And really, honestly, in this offense, it's going to be the fifth guy.
We're speaking to Jeff McClain on the Comcast Business Hotline. Jeff, one of our topics today is we're trying to get into the head of Howie Roseman, and whether or not he believes, not from a fan standpoint, but whether or not he, the GM of the Eagles, has Super Bowl or bust expectations for the team this year based off of the moves that he's made this year, like a Saquon Barkley, a Jahan Dotson. But, of course, there's also a youth movement defensively. So I'll ask you, Howie Roseman walks into Jeffrey Lurie's office. Is he telling him that this is a Super Bowl or bust season?
No, I mean, that's not something Howie would ever do. Now, we do get to talk with Howie today, and this will be probably the last time we really get him before the end of the season, maybe if they make a move before the trade deadline. So he'll be asked questions that kind of get him to talk about what he thinks about the roster. I think one of the things he said last year that made me think, oh, okay, he thinks he's got a pretty good roster, was that he said it was one of the hardest days he had in terms of deciding who stayed and who'd go, and which spoke to the strength of the depth of the roster last year. I don't think the roster is quite as deep this year as it was last year. I'm not saying it's not better or the team won't perform better. There's a lot else that goes into that. I mean, look, they have a good team. We all know that. Look at their roster, you compare it to other teams around the league. They have the strengths on the offensive line, at wide receiver, quarterback's good. Running back certainly with Saquon Barkley, one of the better guys in the league. Defensively, there's some question marks there. They're replacing 6 of 11 starters. They went out and got some guys that they think will be upgrades. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I think on the defensive line, and I think that's the priority to me in any defensive unit is up front. And you have a lot of young guys in the interior that you're asking a lot of. I think Jalen Carter is a beast. He's the best. He's the most talented player on that side of the ball. The question is he ready to be the guy that's just getting doubled on every play, and is he going to move mountains when they need him to? Because I'm not sure, and this is probably my number one area of concern. And it's not that they aren't strong here; they have good players on the edge. It's just are they as good as they were last year? Certainly the year before that. Certainly the year that they went to the Super Bowl. And do they have the guys? They're asking too much of some guys that are aging, and Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat, and that are extremely young in Nolan Smith and Bryce Huff. I think that's a major question for this team.
All right, Jeff. Last thing, we appreciate the time as always. I know you got a busy day ahead of you today. James Bradberry, what's his status come today at 4:00?
Yeah, I mean, I'm projecting him to be released. The Eagles have called around to some teams. From what I understand, no one's trading for Bradberry, especially with that contract. Maybe the Eagles take on some of it, and they can find some way to get him somewhere. Denard Wilson is with the Ravens. He was a big James Bradberry fan, a big reason why Bradberry was here 2 years ago and had the season that he had when he was second-team All-Pro. I just, maybe they keep him because of the contract. I mean, look, they're paying all of the salary, and they say, okay, we've seen enough out of him at safety, and let's just see what we can do here. But I just don't think you can put him in that spot. James is definitely smart enough, and he'll start to get some of the nuances of playing the position that he hadn't before. But size-wise, tackle-wise, like to be that middle field defender, those are just not skills that I think he excels at. So I think it'd be tough for them to keep him there. They are light at that spot. They pretty much have Avonte Maddox now. He'll be the third guy for now. A lot of it will depend upon when they think they'll get Sidney Brown back off of PUP. He's likely to start the season on PUP. They can get him back in 4 weeks, I think it is. And if if they think they can hang on till then, and they have a couple guys in the practice squad like Tristan McCullum or Andre Sam that they think that they can call, if they really need to bring them up on in case someone gets injured, then I just think there's just so many reasons pointing to James Bradberry and just not making this roster.
Jeff, we appreciate the time as always. We'll be following along today on a busy day.